All right. Well, looks like we've got most of everybody in. I'm sure we'll get a few more stragglers coming in as we proceed. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. This is an exciting webinar. It's a record-breaking webinar for us that we've had over 700 people register. I'm your host, Adam Morehouse from Rose Training, and I'm joined with my co-host.
Hi, I'm Jean, married Celebrant trainer and the Celebrancy coordinator here at Rose Training.
So this is going to be an action-packed webinar, Wedding Trends and Insights 2024 with the crew from Easy Weddings. We've got Mel Buttigieg and Beck Crozier. Now, just a quick introduction. Bex has been in the industry for a couple of decades now. She is the brand manager there at Easy Weddings. And Mel is in marketing. She's got a background in journalism and PR. Is that correct?
Yep, that's pretty much.
Fantastic.
Good summary.
All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much time because there's a lot of information to get through, and we'll have some conversations as we go through. So I'm going to turn the time now to Mel to get started. I just want to say again, welcome to everybody. I know that there's a lot of people that are a lot of married celebrants, registered married celebrants with us today. You're going to get so much out of it. There's a lot of our students here that are on their way to becoming married celebrants. So you're going to get so much information, so much great insights from Mel and Beck today. So I'm going to turn the time to you now, Mel.
Terrific. Thanks, Adam and Jean, for the warm welcome and for having us back. We ran a session like this about 12 months ago on last year's data. So for those who tuned in last year, some of the information might be a little bit similar. The data that we found hasn't really changed too much year on year, but we're still seeing some different trends come along. So welcome back for those who have seen us before, and hello to the new people. Yeah, super pumped to be here. So yeah, we appreciate this opportunity. I'm just going to share my screen and let you know what we're doing today. That would be helpful.
Now, just one thing I need to say also,
Yes.
to everybody as we go through, we've put everybody on mute simply because if there's some background noise, the camera will go to your screen and not to Mel's. So we want to keep everybody on mute so that the camera and the audio comes directly from Mel. But we do invite your questions. We'd love you to put a question in the chat box. Jean and I will be looking through the questions, and at the end there will be time for a Q&A session.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we've allocated some time at the end. So as you think of questions, pop them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. Perfect. All right. So as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about wedding trends and insights that we've obtained from our database of couples over the last few months, talking about planning their weddings this year and next year, and also couples who have been recently married. So that's what we're sort of going to highlight today. So a little bit about us, Easy Weddings. If you not familiar with our brand, we're an Australian brand. We are ranked #1 for Google sort of searches for wedding related trends. So we kind of that's where we kind of get the sort of bragging rights that we're Australia's #1 wedding marketplace because we rank really well. We've been in business since 2000, so 23-year-old business. We've got a network of about 5,000 suppliers currently in our ecosystem, and we're seen by about 80% of Australia's engaged couples, which is a huge lot of eyeballs on our website. That equates to about 8 million listing views a year for all of our advertisers who list their business on our platform. And our couples leave reviews for all of our suppliers, and we've racked up about 300,000 to date of reviews from to offer social proof to our current advertisers. So anyway, that's who we are. That's what we're about. You can find us on socials, Easy Weddings, is our Instagram handle, but we also have an Instagram for wedding businesses. So this is separate to, you know, the inspo that we give to our couples. This is Wedding Supplier Network, and I usually post a lot of information about business trends and support for the business community. So into the good stuff. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're Australia's leading wedding marketplace. This is what our sort of, we call them digital storefronts. So that's what they look like. So you can see each of the suppliers, you know, bios and stuff, and a couple can go in and click and find more information out, download a brochure, make an inquiry via our website. And we also have a mobile app as well that our couples really love, just, you know, making to-do lists, browsing, favoriting their suppliers from the couch while they're watching maths or whatever. So there's, you know, we're multi-channeled business. And also a big part of my job is that I put together a bunch of business resources. So rather than talking about, you know, what colors are trending and what cake flavors are, you know, couples, you know, what style dresses people are having, that's still important, but for our business community, they want some tips on how to run their business successfully. So that's where I come in. We have like a blog page where I write regular articles about industry insights, tips, trends, anything that's happening from tech or anything that's related to wedding businesses. I put together articles for that. But today we are going to be talking about our 2024 wedding industry report. So this is a report that we put out every year. Beck and I work on this every year. I think this year was the 8th edition. Is that right, Beck?
Yep.
Yep. And it's a really robust, if you haven't seen it, it's like a 60-page document that goes into everything from budgets to color trends to spending habits to everything you can think of, locations and demographics of our marrying couples for this year and beyond. So anyway, we're going to be talking about all that, and that report, you'll get a copy of that report when Adam sends out the replay of this webinar.
Yeah, we'll include the link to where they can get the report from. I have sent it out before, and many of you who have read it, you'll agree it is such a great report, and the information in it is really, really valuable for anybody who's in the industry.
Yeah, it's really great just to have on your desktop and refer back to it as needed. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about, the trends, couples and weddings for this year and next year, budgets, particularly focusing on Celebrants, how they work, how couples like to work with them, give you some key takeaways and give you some time for questions later on. So a little bit about where we get our data, as mentioned. This is in our report. You can scan that QR code to download it or just wait for the email. So we get some review data from our 300,000 supplier reviews that are left on our platform. We also poll some of our Instagram followers, and we have about just under 50,000 followers. So yeah, it's really great. Treasure trove of information there. We get use some marriage data from the ABS, and also obviously from the thousands of couples who use our platform. So over to the good stuff. I'm going to hand over to Beck to talk about wedding couples this year and beyond.
Thanks, Mel, and thank you everyone for tuning in. So I'm just going to share a bit of a broad overview here about who the average Aussie couple is, what makes them tick, some of their demographics, and also looking at their broader industry at a glance. So some marriage numbers here. It was estimated there was last year 134,370 weddings. Of course, the ABS stats are a little behind, so that's our most educated guess for how many weddings happened last year. This year, we predict 131,280, and then increasing again the following year, 133,582. We estimate there's about 40,000 wedding businesses in Australia, and there's 9,000 plus registered celebrants, which you guys probably already know. We So whilst there are 9,000 celebrants, we know that not all of them who are registered are performing weddings actively every year. And some numbers that are more recent, that the number of celebrants that have not performed more than 5 weddings in total seems to be increasing as well. So I don't know if that 9,000 plus number is daunting for people who are looking to become a celebrant, but it doesn't actually indicate the number of celebrants that are actively performing weddings every year. Okay, now let's have a look at who is getting married. So in a traditional sense, it's a 32-year-old bride and a 35-year-old groom. The ages have gone up year on year on year for many years now, and last year the data showed there were, it was a 31-year-old bride and a 33-year-old groom. So there's a couple of reasons. The pandemic did shift weddings out a little bit. So there would have been postponements and things that happened to bump those ages up, but also just noting that it is just a cultural trend that couples are getting married a little later in life, and that doesn't seem to be reversing anytime soon, but it will be interesting to see where that plateaus. Then some other stats about them, and as you'll see in the next slides coming up, couples are mostly meeting online these days. So Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, all of these new and upcoming dating apps, this is where they're hanging out more so than years gone by where they get introduced through friends or they meet at the pub. They're getting married for the first time. They're engaged for around 22 months, but the planning time for their wedding is about 15 months. So it takes them a while to actually start getting into the swing of things. They're saving up for their weddings, and then they concentrate that planning time into around 15 months. The number of guests that they're inviting to their weddings has gone down over the last couple of years. It was sitting at 100 for many years, but now this year the average number is 89, and that is 30 fewer guests than they would like to invite. And we'll explain a little bit about that in a moment. What doesn't change though, despite inviting less people, and even the pandemic seeing a rise in elopements, most people are having 8 or 10 people in their wedding party. So still that traditional, perhaps 4 guys on one side and 4 guys on the other as a wedding party. Lastly, the average cost of a wedding, excluding the honeymoon, this year comes in a little lower than last year. We'll get into that as well, $33,810. So yeah, this point about the rise of dating app engagements, more couples are using these apps not just for a good time, but maybe more of a long time. And we're seeing engagements happen out of them, and it's the #1 way now that couples are meeting, and you can see that rise there over the years, 28% now meeting through these apps. And so why that's kind of relevant to us as business people and, in the wedding industry, it just highlights how important being tech savvy and meeting these couples where they're at when it comes to the tech that they use, and in particularly communication and marketing, and that's something we'll chat about again in a moment.
And especially as the demographic of our target market, changed, they're more tech savvy than even sort of 5+ years ago. So it's really important that we really, meet our couples where they are. I'm not saying that we go on Tinder to advertise our business, but just be aware that, the way that they communicate is changing, which takes us to the next point, Beck.
Yeah, so this is another point that's really crucial to remember, and this is the way that Gen Y and Z want to communicate. Interestingly, here we see that 81%, and this is in the early days of communication with you when they're seeking out a Celebrant to use. They're doing it via email. They're wanting to get the information that they want via email, whether that's contacting you first from whichever method that they've found you, and then utilizing the other kinds of methods like text or, you know, SMS as a subsequent way or supplementary way of communicating. So whilst the graph heavily shows 81% of couples favour email, it is a kind of multi-channel approach in the end. And as they become more comfortable with you, then that can flick across to phone. But in the initial stages, while they're at work, planning their weddings on the boss's time, they're sending off discreet emails and not answering the phone or making loud, overt phone calls. Okay, engagement dates. This is important as well because it highlights when you will be busiest fielding new business inquiries. So we know that 6% of all engagements happen between Christmas and New Year, and 13% happen in the month of December. And then other high engagement periods tend to focus around long weekends. So in Victoria, for example, it might be June for the King's birthday now, not the Queen. And that will be different for you guys if you're in Queensland for whenever your main public holidays fall.
Like Labor Day and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just good to keep in mind as to when to ramp up and get all of your marketing ready to go for these peak periods, which we are currently in because of all the couples that got married. Oh, we've just ticked over to Feb, but yeah, in December.
Yeah, and it's a really important note that, you know, I mean, obviously you always want to have your social media and everything on point, but you'll particularly get extra eyeballs around about those sort of long weekend times, because that's usually when people get engaged and they're excited to sort of, you know, save their, you know, if they're on Instagram, they'll save, you know, some inspo to come back to later on. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Okay, how the couples choose their wedding date. So this is important for when you'll be actually performing the weddings. Usually it's tied into their favourite venue's availability, but then it's by their favourite season, and then sometimes it's because the day itself has special meaning. It's got nothing to do with it being spring or their favourite venue being able to host them. It's the day itself.
You know, like anniversaries or parents' wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
Or even numerology. I think the 22nd of the something 2022 was a big day. What was it, October?
22/10/22.
Yeah, there you go.
Look out for 23/11/23.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, March and October are the busiest months for weddings. So those autumn and spring seasons. And we always like to highlight, though, the months that have 5 Saturdays. So this year, that's March, June, August, and November, will have the most number of Saturdays compared to the other months. And as you'll see on the next slide, the majority of couples, just over half, are still seeking out Saturdays as their preferred day to get married.
And kind of the relevance of this is that it's kind of obvious that we know that Saturday is popular, but on those five peak, the months that have 5 weekends, you might consider you know, putting up your prices for those you know, peak times of the year, and potentially offering a discount for seasons where it's not so popular. But that's sort of up to your discretion. It's just capitalizing on when the peak times are and when it's not so busy.
That's a good point. And I suppose you could also have maybe a higher price for a Saturday and a discounted price for a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. And we, the industry report itself, we sort of haven't put it in this presentation because there's a lot to cover anyway, but we have a whole section about the cost of living coming to effect this year. And because of the cost of living, we're noticing that, you know, Thursday and midweek weddings are still an option, a real option for a lot of couples, because you know, the venue price will be a lot cheaper, and potentially celebrants or whoever else that they book. So, you know, it could save 10, 15, 20 grand depending on your numbers, but it is a very real option for our couples sort of this year and next year. So yeah, have a think about, you know, if books aren't being filled, you know, maybe that's something that you can offer off, you know, an off-peak rate or something as an incentive to get them to book you.
Okay, so having a quick look here about what couples find most stressful about planning a wedding, and you know, there's a room here full of celebrants, and actually what we hear most from couples about their celebrant is how the celebrant, and just because of the nature of you know, the qualities of the people that usually decide to take up this as a passion or a career, they end up becoming this sort of sounding board, a shoulder to lean on for the couple. So it's such a lovely extra sort of thing that you're able to offer these couples. The number one thing that they're stressing about is sticking to their budget. And as Mel said, with the cost of living concerns, that's more pertinent than ever this year, followed by the guest list. So we saw that couples invite 30 fewer guests than they actually want to. So that's obviously stressful, having to cull their list or fit it into their budget. Couples spend 22% more than their original wedding budget. So that's come down a little bit. Normally they're splurging a bit more. They're spending 26% more than their wedding budget, but they don't have that option as much this year. So they're really tightening that splurge factor. But thankfully for you guys as celebrants, you know, you can't get married without you. So you're not a splurge, you're a must-have. And it's not going to be as relevant as some of the other categories in this industry.
That are more like nice to have. So, you know, it could be a videographer that might not be in budget, so they just go with a photographer, or, you know, reduce the hours that they spend. But celebrants, you can't really have a full wedding without one. So yeah, something to think about. So I'm taking over the next slide. So now, where do couples first discover their suppliers? So this is more about being visible. So we found that just under a quarter of our couples first discover their suppliers through Easy Weddings, 31%. So we kind of can talk about Easy Weddings being Australia's #1 source of truth when planning a wedding. Obviously, social media, about 21%, is still quite significant. Google search is also quite important as well. And then friends and family, venue recommendations, expos, planners, that sort of thing, are sort of fill out the rest. So kind of goes back to we talk about networking later on, but, you know, having recommendations from venues, making contacts, networking with venues in your region will really help you with that referral piece. Now, top 4 buying influencers. This changed slightly from last year. Obviously, upfront pricing was the #1, same as last year, and photos that match the vision for the couple. But personal connection has actually become #3, and that's really important for celebrants, because celebrants are a very emotional sort of piece in the wedding, you know, the wedding day. They're quite integral to, you know, to creating the vibe and setting the scene. So it's really important that, you know, you really make a personal connection on social media, using those platforms to really present yourself as a brand and as a person, so that they can kind of, once they're starting to sort of flag you as a potential person that they might like to book, you know, they might start following you. Haven't booked anyone yet, but, you know, being comfortable with putting your face out there in stories, sharing behind the scenes content. It's really important to give your customer base a sort of an insight into who you are as a brand and as a person, and create that connection, because that's really what's going to help you sell your brand. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Facebook and social media in general, and putting your videos out there and sharing content, get up to speed, you know, get familiar with it. It can be quite intimidating at first, but once you get a bit more comfortable talking to the camera, it will really help do wonders for that brand recognition. We're talking a little bit about social media platforms Celebrants use. Instagram and Facebook continues to be the leading one, but obviously, you know, because we're such a visual sort of medium, Celebrants are there creating a scene, so creating a positive scene, but I mean they're part of the day, and to set the scene, set the tone. YouTube is becoming useful as well, to, you know, put yourself out there as well, and TikTok is, you know, starting to, you know, it's only 10%, it's only being used by 10% of Celebrants so far, but as our demographic lives on TikTok, it's something to you know, to get familiar with over the years. And I'll hand over to Beck to talk about trends more broadly and why they're important.
I'll just make a point on that last one, Mel.
Yes.
I think when we've looked at how many engaged couples there are on Facebook in Australia, it's generally around the 300,000 to 400,000 mark.
Mm-hmm.
So of course that would be rotating, people getting engaged and going into that pool, and then of course changing their status to married and moving out of it. Yeah, so in any given area of the country, you obviously you're going to be able to have a look and see how many people have changed their relationship status to engaged.
Yeah,
Way of knowing your market.
Yeah, it's a really great point. And obviously all those different social media channels have different advantages. Like I mentioned before about, you know, about YouTube, they're really great to have little short videos that you can put on your website. You can integrate them into Easy Weddings as well. Facebook is not as visually stimulating as something like Instagram. A lot of our couples will go to Instagram, create a vision board, save pages, save posts. Facebook is more, we kind of say it's more for like the mother of the bride demographic, more for information gathering rather than that kind of visual vision board. So while it's still important to definitely use it, you just think about the different types of social media platforms you use, and making your content fit for purpose. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but as we've seen with our stats, number 3 is creating a personal connection, and social media is really important to do that.
Okay, so I'll just highlight here now, we've gone from the couple. Now I'll highlight here what kind of trends we're seeing for the weddings themselves, and why this is relevant to you guys as celebrants. So where they're hosting their receptions, it's pretty even here in this top 5, but the most popular setting for a reception is the garden or outdoor wedding. Obviously here in Australia, we are blessed with beautiful outdoor spaces. So that's likely why it's number 1, followed by winery, farm, barn, water view, and then finally the more traditional ballroom setting. So those top 4 settings all have kind of a natural outdoorsy element to it. Even if they're not outdoors, they're bringing the outdoors in through like water view, for example, or hosting it in a more outdoorsy kind of setting, like in at a farm or a barn. Then when it comes to their ceremony, well, more than half of couples are choosing to have the vows and the ceremony at the reception venue itself. So the all-in-one experience, where they're not having to travel between a separate ceremony venue and place where they'll celebrate. After that, couples are 20% or 19% of couples are getting married in an outdoor space like a park or a garden or a beach, public space, and then finally 11% in the traditional church setting. So if we think back to that previous slide about the buying influences, the number 2 factor there was that the photos on the supplier's socials or website match the vision that they have in their mind for their wedding. So this is why understanding what the current color trends are is really important. In 2024, whites and neutrals are by far the most popular color palette, like the white wedding, followed by greens and greenery, and then pinks and blues. So, oh, and then, yes, thanks, Mel. In addition to that, just as a trending thing to note, every year Pantone releases its color of the year. You may know this already. This year, it is peach fuzz. So any of these colors, whites, neutrals, pinks, greens, blues, and this latest color of the year, peach, if you can incorporate this into your marketing, you'll already be recognized as a celebrant that understands what couples are looking for and what they've got in their mind for their wedding. And likewise with the actual styling of their day. So the top 3 styles of modern couples' weddings, number 1 is rustic. It's been like this for about 10 years. Couples really favouring that Aussie rustic wedding, followed by a more sleek, slimlined, modern, minimalist style for their day, really pared back, lots of clean lines. And then lastly, in third place, but not by far behind, is the romantic, lots of delicate fabrics, florals and candles. So again, when you're trying to decide what kind of imagery to use in your marketing, seeking out things that fit those top 3 styles would serve you well to being relevant to couples today.
Yeah, and it goes back to that making that personal connection piece that we talked about earlier. Thanks, Beck. Now I'm going to I'll go pretty quickly about budgets because it's pretty boring and I want to get to the good stuff. But just in general, the wedding budget overall has flattened this year. So it's still on average just under 34K, and this takes into account your registry weddings that might be, you know, under $1,000, as well as, you know, those big budget weddings where they would usually hire like a planner, and they might not we don't usually have that data because they don't use our platform. So it's kind of in that middle range. An average couple will generally spend about 34K. And it's, as we said earlier, it's come down 2.4%, which sounds like a lot, 2.5 rather, which sounds like a lot, but it's really only jumped from just under 35K. So it's really $1,000 on last year. And we can see that it's been trending, you know, obviously through COVID, it flattened a little bit, it took a bit of a dip, but we've kind of recovered and from pre-pandemic sort of averages. I mean, and this will change depending on a lot of things, but it's just a general number to have a think about. I'll skip over this. Oh, and we also found that if both partners have already been married, their budget will be halved as much. So they're spending about 16K as opposed to 34K. So something to think about. Good news for celebrants though, some suppliers this year have gone down or flattened with their spending on year to year. Celebrants though, the average price for a celebrant has gone up 7%, which is really great news for us. And that's also continued an upward trajectory. It was 6% the year before, so good news. But as I said, I wanted to skip through and talk a bit more about celebrants particularly. So we know that we said before there are about 9,000 registered celebrants nationally. Most of them have been in business for 8 years. And our data shows that they spend about a third of their revenue on marketing and advertising, which is a huge chunk. And marketing also comes down to the social media that we mentioned before. So investing your time in all those social media platforms, to create that brand awareness. And they're roughly spending about 16 hours on each wedding. And that's not kind of including on the day, that's the planning. So really take into consideration, you know, what your time is worth when you're thinking about what your pricing is for your service. And in terms of responding to inquiries, just under half respond within 24 hours and just over a third respond within an hour. So keep that in mind. That's what your competition is doing. If you're waiting more than a day to respond to an inquiry, you've probably missed the boat and they've probably inquired with somebody else and further along in that process. 92% of celebrants are devoted to weddings, while 8% also do funerals and other events like speaking engagements. So the average cost of a marriage celebrant nationally is $874. As mentioned, it's gone up 7% year on year. And this just gives you a state-by-state breakdown of roughly the average per state. Obviously, it differs depending on where you are. We, across the board, sort of, it really depends, where you are. But you'll probably have a better idea of what your local market is just by talking with your communities as well. So what couples are looking for. This hasn't changed. If you were listened to our talk last year, hasn't changed too much. They still want a celebrant who has a sense of humor and who has a warm sort of nature. They're the main things. Religion isn't really that important anymore, but yeah, they're the main things to look for. And this is the part that that I find really interesting, what couples are looking for and what they don't want in their celebrants. So 85% are booking a civil celebrant rather than a religious, you know, a priest or a clergy. 56% want to write their own vows and like some personalization, while just under a quarter like a mix of traditional and personal. And 3/4 want unplugged ceremonies. So that means, you know, turn your phones off, you know, be in the moment, rely on our professional photos and, you know, take your own selfies at the reception. Couples are being kept, our couples have told us that they like being kept up to date through the planning process. So just check in. And obviously they like the legalities explained in simple terms. And one new kind of thing this year is that they really appreciate a coordinated outfit with their wedding theme. So as Beck mentioned earlier, those sort of pastel tones, the pinks, the peaches, the blues, and the neutral palettes. Something to think about if you want to update your wardrobe, especially for the women. If you don't have pink, maybe think about investing in a statement piece, because that is pink has always been a big color choice. But anyway, something to think about.
No, I think Mel, that last slide, going back about 5 years ago now, I think it was like 78 or 79. So it's interesting to see that almost like maybe 1% a year increase in terms of couples choosing a civil celebrant.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Interesting to see we're at 85% now.
Yeah, and that sort of reflects the, you know, social trends as well. Like, you know, Australians aren't as religious as they used to be 10 years plus before. So, you know, there's a lot of that element in that as well. And it's good news for you guys. You know, more Australians are preferring to book one of you than going to the, you know, chapel and using you know, a priest or religious representation. So yeah, what couples don't love. So one of the things that they dislike from their celebrants is judgment, especially when they talk about their relationship timeline. So I'll leave that with you. Have a think about that. Also, not being pushy about traditions. You know, this is their wedding. We're curating their wedding for them. If they don't want to do rings or things like that, you know, be open-minded. You know, we're seeing a lot of bridal parties now that are mixed gendered. You know, some prefer, I went to a wedding where the bride and the groom both were escorted by both parents down the aisle, which was really cute. So, you know, things that were normal before, were the norm before, aren't quite the norm anymore. And if they want to do something a little bit different, you know, you'll have a bit more of a relationship if you're a bit more flexible. And going off script, you know, yeah, we can ad lib a little bit, but if, you know, keep to what was discussed, because if they get surprises, they're already nervous, and you know, it's what they wanted. So anyway, this is quite
Mel, can I just add to the last comments about judgment when sharing details, being too pushy about tradition? The code of practice for celebrants is that we are to recognise the significant beliefs and cultural beliefs of the clients that we're working with. So we've got a basic outline that we can offer the couple, but in the end, it's the couple's choice and never about what we think they should be doing, just what it is that is significant to them. So it's really important that celebrants don't actually forget that code of practice.
I love that. I didn't actually know that was a thing, but yeah,
yes,
that's wonderful. Yeah. Great. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jean. And yeah, this is a really obvious one, but a lot of celebrants are required to obviously bring their own microphone. Make sure that it works. Make sure that your microphone and speaker is working properly. And also integrate as best as possible. You're a professional, work well with other suppliers on the day. You know, we're hearing from our couples that say that their celebrants didn't work well with their photographers when they're setting up for the ceremony. That's, you know, it seems pretty obvious, but you know, it's something to look out for. And know your paperwork. So we've been told that some celebrants are filling out their forms wrong, spelling mistakes, things like that. So just keep in mind that's really important, obviously a legal requirement, but you know, get it right. I don't want to talk too much because I want to get to the Q&A, but we talked about before social media platforms. In terms of paid marketing platforms celebrants are using, we're seeing that obviously 81% of celebrants are using Easy Weddings. A few of them are using other directories, Google AdWords, paid SEO, that sort of thing. Magazines and expos are still being used. Expos particularly with the face-to-face sort of meet and greets. But you know, something to think about. There are different paid avenues that you can explore, as well as the organic posts and shares. Another one to mention is the buying cycle. Now, I mentioned earlier about networking with venues and other suppliers in your region. It's really important to understand that celebrants are booked quite early in the piece, so about 9 months before the wedding. So it's quite early on, and in that sort of cycle, that sort of first column of early celebrants to book, you've also got venues, caterers, planners, photographers around about that same sort of time frame in that early bracket. So it's really important to try and network with other of those types of suppliers in your region, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's in person, meetups, all that sort of stuff. If you're at functions, at weddings, you know, share, you know, get familiar with them, strike up a rapport, share business cards, really build that, because you'll sort of open that referral stream back and forth. And this kind of gives you a landscape of where celebrants sit in the broader timeline across the whole buying cycle. So you'll see, you know, we're sort of in that first column, and then comes sort of, you know, music, cars, flowers, you know, cakes later on. Obviously, every couple is going to be very different. Some people might want to nail the invitation straight away before they even pick their celebrant. That's totally up to them, but just gives you a general idea of where you guys fit in. And then just before we head to the Q&A, reviews are super important. I'll hand over to Beck to talk about why, but yeah, go for it, Beck.
Can you share again, Mel? It's dropped off.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to be too technical here, and I am too technical for my own good. Give me 1 second. Sorry, Beck. Sharing screen now. Here we go.
Okay, so yeah, lastly, we want to mention the importance of getting reviews. So once you become a celebrant, you start performing weddings, how much getting the review from the couple about how they found you and how wonderful you were, hopefully, and how that goes into securing future couples getting married. That social proof is so important. They've never planned a wedding before. They need a lot of trust in what the service is going to be like. Like they've only got one shot at it. There's no refunds, or you can't do it again. So it is really important. So this is just a little bit of info on when to be seeking out those reviews once you've done the actual ceremony. We know that most couples, 85%, will have a honeymoon, and 87% are up to 2 weeks long, and then a further 10% are up to 4 weeks long. So what we recommend is asking for the couple to leave a review for you. Either if you end up listing with Easy Weddings, we have a reviews platform. Otherwise, it's places like Google and Facebook or Trustpilot, for example. Asking for those reviews 3 days after the wedding when they're still on a high, and they've likely got time because they'll be going on their honeymoon, and then following up 1 month later once they're back from their honeymoon. And we know that asking for a review once will get a response from 1 in 5 couples, and then asking twice, so not pestering them, but having the courage to ask again, this will increase to 1 in 3. Okay. So here we're just going to run through some quick takeaways. If any of you are out there taking photos of screens, then these are some of these next 2 slides are the slides for you. Let's run through these briefly before we go into Q&A. So Easy Weddings is still the number 1 place that Australian couples first discover their suppliers. So once you're trained and qualified and out there performing weddings, please consider listing here to get the most exposure. After finding you on Easy Weddings, couples will research further on your website and socials. So it's really important to have congruence between your Facebook and Instagram accounts, your website, and any other marketing that you're doing, so that everything's cohesive and feels linked and all together. One thing that Mel and I discussed before jumping in here today is how celebrants, out of pretty much every category of supplier in the industry, you yourself are your brand. So getting comfortable, as Mel said before, putting yourself out there on social media is so important, and therefore prioritizing learning basic video editing will be a skill that we really recommend that you take. And reviewing your fees. Your prices are going up consistently every year, which is great. If you haven't increased your fees, if you're currently practicing, then it is a good time to do that. And lastly, couples do choose suppliers, as we've said a few times now, whose content fits their vibe and who they personally connect with. So understanding those colors, those trends, and bringing your authentic self to your marketing is the way to go. Respond the same way that the couples communicate with you, and have strategies ready, such as email templates, ready to fire off responses in a really timely manner. We know that this year, March and October, will be the busiest months to get married, so do consider premium pricing in those months. Consider incentives to book off-peak, conversely. So budget-conscious couples are marrying Sundays and weekdays, and please do prioritise asking for reviews and making reviews a part of your marketing strategy.
Yeah, and I think we kind of glossed over why they're important. It's quite obvious why they're important. You know, weddings are usually a one-time transaction, and we don't really get repeat customers. So we've only really got one chance to get it right. So relying on reviews from previous happy couples will sort of help you with, you know, social proof to promote your brand and your business to the, you know, newer couples that are coming along. I'll keep this really brief because I want to get into questions, but yeah, we're from Easy Weddings. You can find us at easyweddings.com.au. We're on socials, we're everywhere. If you want to find out about, you know, what it costs to list with us and a bit more about what we can do for your business to give you more visibility, just head to easyweddings.com.au. There's a little list your business button. Click that and put in your details, and our team will give you a call and talk about, you know, your options. I won't give you a whole big sales spiel here, but the way that our marketplace works is you can pay different prices to have more visibility higher up on the page and more prominence. Obviously, the more money, the higher tier you go, the more visibility you get. But as a special offer for Rose Training, it's available, like we're offering this for the whole year, so you might take a little while to get your business up and running. So yeah, available up to the end of December. But if you mention Rose Training when you inquire and end up listing with us, we'll give you a free month of a position upgrade. So basically, if you come in at standard, we'll boost you to priority for free for a month, so you can try it out and see you know, what benefits you get. And if you come in at priority, we'll upgrade you to premium for a month. So anyway, if you're interested in finding out a bit more about that, have a chat to our sales team, but just be sure to mention Rose Training, and they'll tell you what the offer is. And the wedding report, check it out. You'll get the link in the email that goes around. But yeah, have a read for a deep dive into what we covered today and more. And I'll throw over to Adam to ask us some questions.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Mel. And I'll ask Jean to join in with me and sort of asking the questions as well. There's some questions about marketing. I think some of the more technical ones, I think we cover them in webinars like this. We've got some coming up. So, but quickly, I think someone's asking about platforms to do their marketing on. We often do some sort of introductions and trainings of Canva. Jean uses it. I also use it. I think that Mel, your slides were in Canva.
Yeah, Beck and I love Canva. It's quite affordable, and if you don't have a degree in graphic design, it's a very cut corners way of
Yeah. And they also have a free subscription too. So anyone that wanted to get on Canva, you can do it for free. You just don't have some of the greater options that they have, but still fabulous.
Still so affordable, even if you upgrade.
Yes,
I'm sure they're going to up their prices soon, but I'm enjoying the low rates.
Especially when you compare it to, you know, the Adobe suite, it's a no-brainer. But yeah. Also, we're not sponsored by Canva.
No, we always say that, but we talk about it a lot.
We're avid ambassadors.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting was the peak seasons, March and October, and it's given that most of there's that natural aspect, the outdoors, you know, the water view. It's obviously those are the most comfortable months of the year in Australia as well. Am I just making that up, or is there a correlation?
Yeah, weather's such a big consideration for weddings. Wet weather plan, not having it too hot, not too cold, least amount of rain. So there's a definite correlation there. You're right. Yeah,
summer and autumn are traditionally the biggest. Yes.
Autumn and spring.
Autumn and spring.
Although it does rain a lot in spring, so I think a lot of couples forget this. And
if you're in Melbourne, it doesn't matter.
That's true.
And that March one, and the numbers. So this year being 24, any of those 20, the 4s, any of the number sequences are the days that book out pretty quickly. So I don't wonder if this year that's why March has moved on so fast as well, being the 2024. And the other one is the number 11. Someone put in 22 is a powerful number, but the number 11 is a powerful number. And like, for example, last year, the 11th of the 11th, 23, if you add all those numbers up, it's 11.
Oh,
Wow.
So yeah, a couple of my couples were married on the 11th of the 11th, 23, because of the powerful symbol of the numbers added up. So if you're a bit of a numbers person, really is out there. People are looking for that as well.
Okay, so somebody asked about Canva. Is it an Australian business? It is. It's one of those
Yes.
great Australian
Their
businesses that
stories, yeah.
are out there around the world. They're fantastic.
Hmm.
Another question is, okay, this is asked a few times. This presentation is being recorded, and we will send the link to you in an email in the coming days. So you will get that, and there also will be a link to the report itself. But also at that last slide that Mel shared had a QR code on it. I presume that they can find their way to the report through that QR code. Is that correct, Mel?
Yes, I'll share it on the screen again. So if anyone wants to get that up, they can. But yeah, it's the same link.
Okay. Another question was about, so you talked about how celebrants choose their, how couples choose their celebrant. But both in terms of the right vibe. Someone asked, do they like to have someone their same age? Is age an issue?
What do you think?
No, everyone wants their mother to marry them. Sorry.
I think it's it's the importance is that you feel comfortable with the celebrant. You know, some people might be a bit superficial and want like a hot young celebrant in their photos, but our couples are telling us that they just want someone that they can vibe with, their personality matches them, they can be comfortable with. So
yeah, I think one thing I would say that we've noticed is that there's been an increase of men applying to be celebrants. Typically it's sort of like a 90-10 female-male split, but that is certainly changing in the last year. So the more males coming into the picture, that's a trend we're seeing.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. Yeah, it is, as you said, still heavily skewed towards females, but there is, and I don't know what it is exactly about the men themselves wanting to do it, and maybe it's just a cultural shift, and that whole inclusivity piece, and just how things are more inclusive for everyone. So this kind of career is more accessible for men.
yeah, and I think it also goes down to personality as well. We know that a lot of celebrants get booked as MCs and speakers as well for the wedding ceremony, the wedding itself, and other gigs. And that's something that, you know, I don't want to be generalizing, but like men usually are dominant in that area. So maybe that there's a correlation between, you know, them doing those speaking gigs, and now this is sort of the natural progression. But obviously we're seeing both, you know, all genders represented. So a quick question we've had just in the chat. Julia's asked, how many successful bookings do you get from Easy Weddings per month? That's really dependent on a lot of things. It's very varied. I know that Natasha Hill posted in the chat that she gets almost half of her bookings from Easy Weddings, followed by Google and word of mouth. Really depends. Natasha's been with us for a while. She's very established. Some newer suppliers that come on board might need a little bit of time to develop their business. But there's a lot of work that sort of needs to go on behind the scenes as well. We're kind of like one arsenal in your toolkit. Successful celebrants like Natasha and probably some others in this session really do well because they not only have really great photos that match the vision and everything on their Easy Weddings profile, but they also reply to inquiries really quickly. They have a really great CRM or process that they track their pipeline really well. They promote themselves on social media really well and engage and create like a brand awareness that way as well. So We just say it's one sort of element that you can have in your toolkit to promote your brand, but you really need to sort of put in the work as well and not rely on just people coming through our website and send you an inquiry. You need to follow up. You need to have your sales sort of your sales tactics and strategies down, you know, respond to your suppliers and have a really engaging presence offline, like, you know, on your own social channels and website as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look, we're at the top of the hour, and I really want to respect everybody's time. We've been here for an hour. Thanks so much for joining us. Mel and Beck, thanks so much for coming back this year.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. It
It's
was
so
my pleasure, our pleasure.
insightful, such great
Yeah.
information. Yeah.
We'll
So
come
we
back
want to
next
be-
year if you'll have us.
Let's do it again
Yeah.
next year.
Okay.
All right.
Do it
Yeah,
again
thanks a lot.
next year,
Take care.
absolutely.
Have a
Wonderful.
good day.
Thanks
Bye,
for joining
everyone.
us,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great year. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.